Under the glowing tapestry of carnival lights, the winding pathways between the booths teemed with people eager to lose themselves in color and music. At the far edge of the fairgrounds stood a striped tent of deep purple and electric blue, half hidden by the hustle of the amusements around it. White letters painted above the entrance read, Madame Anya, Secrets of the Universe Revealed, with a crystal ball emblazoned beneath. The enticing sign called to many, but only a few found the nerve to step inside on any given night. Within the tent, Madame Anya sat behind a small wooden table, propping her arms on a richly embroidered cloth. She wore piquant perfume that smelled of violets and night air, the fragrance dancing among the heady incense swirls that wafted across the space. Long, silken black hair framed her face, and a beaded string of charms tinkled softly each time she moved. A crystal ball as big as a grapefruit gleamed in the dim light, silver sparkles dancing along its surface. The swirling shapes within had a mesmerizing pull for anyone who dared to look. In countless readings, Anya had gazed into that crystal ball to unravel the secrets of her patrons. She read their palms, laid out tarot cards with a flourish, and allowed the lines on their hands to describe their potential paths. It came naturally to her, a skill she had honed since she was a child, peeking through a velvet curtain while her grandmother performed the same ritual. The crystal ball, she believed, harbored a tiny window into the swirling future, a gift she cautiously shared with strangers. But for all her proficiency, Anya had never paused to contemplate her own destiny. Her mother, also a fortune teller, had cautioned against looking too deeply into personal prophecies. The burden is too great, her mother used to say. If you see yourself clearly, you might try to outrun what's written. But in unguarded moments, while the carnival quieted at dusk, Anya yearned for a glimpse of her own course, a flicker that might console her whenever solitude weighed on her heart. One Tuesday evening, the crowd was thinner than usual. Rain clouds threatened overhead, dampening the noise of the fair. She had just performed a reading for a young couple seeking confirmation that their love would survive the stress of moving across the country. Through carefully chosen words and gentle hints, she ignited their hope and reminded them of the possibilities waiting if they faced challenges together. As they departed, holding onto each other's hands, they left Anya alone with her crystal ball. The swirling shapes in the orb shimmered faintly, almost beckoning her. She trailed her fingers along its surface. A sudden curiosity prickled through her. Would it be so wrong to seek just a minor clue about her fate? Her heart pounded lightly in her chest. What if she discovered she was destined to be alone? Or possibly that her path was full of heartbreak? The possibility stretched before her, heavy with risk, yet she felt compelled to know. Leaning forward, she let her long lashes close for just a moment. She inhaled the sweet aroma of incense and then opened her eyes. With a measured focus, she summoned her intuition and directed it inward toward the swirl of color. Slowly, images began to form. The edges were fuzzy, ghostly silhouettes at first. Then shapes coalesced into an outline of a figure. She saw a man with a gentle stance, shoulders slightly hunched as though shy. In her vision, a soft light radiated around him, and though his features were veiled in shadow, the faint suggestion of a smile touched his lips. She felt a surge of warmth in her chest. It was an unexplainable sensation, like an invisible thread tugging at her heart. Then, without warning, the images vanished, replaced by a sudden pulsing glow that thickened into a fog. Alarmed, Anya pressed a palm to her own chest, feeling her heartbeats even out. Excitement rushed through her. She gasped as she realized that she, accustomed to seeing futures for others, had indeed caught a precious, dizzying glimpse of her own. Breath trembling, she wondered who this shy man might be. Would he appear soon? Was he already near? Moments later, footsteps scuffed outside the entrance to her tent. The canvas rustled, and a tall young woman in a maroon coat stepped hesitantly inside. Anya worked swiftly to clear her mind, burying her fleeting vision behind her professional composure. The woman had anxious eyes and confessed to worrying about her new job. The fortune teller laid out her tarot cards, efficient and unruffled. Yet the entire time her mind lingered on what she saw in that swirling orb. For the first time in her life, a reading had shown her a fragment of her own fate. She could hardly concentrate. After that night, a mixture of excitement and dread coursed through her. Each evening, she set up her table and lit her candles, checking the carnival pathway for any visitor who matched the dim silhouette. She silently wondered if she would even recognize him clearly. Her memory of the vision was intangible, more a feeling than an image. Still, she hoped it would become real. Days fluttered into nights, each one bringing her new visitors with private questions. A group of teenagers giggling over the mysterious aura of the tent. A mother and son. The mother wanting to know if her son would stay out of trouble. An older woman seeking closure about a lost love. Though Anya offered each the same careful reading, she felt a persistent tug inside her, an undercurrent of longing. Beneath her professional calm, she also felt a growing fear that maybe fate had changed its mind, and that vision of a kind, shy man in her future was only a fleeting trick of the light. Then, one crisp autumn evening, not long before closing time, a visitor stepped timidly beneath the fringed entrance. Anya looked up from her table and felt a jolt surge through her veins. He lingered by the entrance as though he wasn't sure if he ought to step forward. His posture was tentative, shoulders bent forward slightly, and he wore a thin jacket that gave him a delicate air. Something about him captured her attention, a gentle kindness visible in his eyes. "Hi," he said softly. "Is this still open, or did I come too late?" A strange hitch caught in Anya's throat, as if an unnamed force had suddenly walked into the tent. She mustered a small, practiced smile to hide her own tangle of emotions. "I'm open for a little while longer," she answered, her voice warm. "Come in." The man offered a half smile and entered, easing onto a stool across from her. He folded his hands in his lap, not quite comfortable enough to rest them on the table. The delicate scent of his cologne drifted toward her, a subtle note of sandalwood and something sweet. Nervously, he cleared his throat. "My name's Gabriel. I've never done anything like this before. I just saw your sign and, well, I've had a lot on my mind." Anya nodded, remaining outwardly poised, though her pulse raced. "Fortune telling can help you sort through questions that weigh on your heart," she said, choosing her words carefully. "But remember, we are all free to shape our paths. The reading can guide you, not command you." Gabrielle exhaled as though relieved. "That's good to know." He leaned in slightly. There have been changes in my life. My mother passed away last year, and I left my hometown. I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing now. Sometimes I feel lost." Each word he spoke stirred empathy in Anya. It was a familiar refrain she often heard from those seeking guidance, but something in his manner tugged at her consciousness, reminding her of the vision that had sparked hope in her heart. She reached for the deck of tarot cards, stirring them deftly. Carefully, she dealt them on the table, her slender fingers smoothing the edges of each card. She began interpreting the spread. A card indicating an emotional burden weighted in the past, reflecting his grief, and another signifying transition in the present. Then she turned over the next card, revealing the Lovers, which typically symbolized relationships or significant life choices. A delicate vibration pulsed through Anya's fingertips. She paused, glancing up into Gabriel's uncertain eyes. "Change is coming," she said quietly. "You'll need to trust that you are more resilient than you think. There might be support for you, maybe from someone you haven't yet realized you can lean on, or something new may blossom in your life if you remain open to it." His lips quirked up in a shy smile. "That sounds comforting, actually." She continued the reading, attention drifting briefly to the crystal ball. For once, she did not dare to peer inside while a client was present. She guessed it might show her that same fleeting silhouette, his silhouette. The very thought made her heart flutter with a strange joy. When Gabriel rose to leave, he thanked her quietly. "I guess I just needed to talk," he said. "Thanks for listening and for everything." Anya watched him part the curtain, stepping back out into the carnival's neon blur. For a moment, she sat as though entranced, trying to process the calm hush he had brought with him. Sealing herself, she inhaled a calming breath and continued her night's work. She secretly hoped that if fate intended it, if that flash of the future was more than just a dream, Gabrielle might find his way back to her tent again. The next night, a steady trickle of visitors came by, but Gabrielle didn't appear. Nor did he come the following evening, or the one after that. Determined to maintain her usual composure, Anya told herself not to cling to that single vision. Fate would unfold as it willed, and she had no place, forcing destiny's hand. Fate, however, had other ideas. A week later, near the end of her shift, she heard the delicate sound of someone clearing his throat at the tent's entrance. She turned to see Gabrielle peeking in again, that uncertain half-smile on his face. Warmth rushed through her, and she nodded for him to enter. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me," he said, stepping closer to the table, "but I wanted to see if maybe we could talk again." Anya's smile lit her eyes. "I remember you well, Gabriel. Take a seat." Instead of asking for a formal reading, he admitted that he just liked talking to her, that visiting her made him feel safe. By the gentle glow of the swirling incense, he confessed that for the past few days, he'd begun to sense a quiet yearning to return, though he couldn't fully explain why. The fortune teller in her might have answered that it was destiny, that invisible threads bound them. Yet she held back, wanting to allow him the space to come to his own realizations. Their conversation slipped easily into shared truths about life. He talked about how he missed the small lake from his hometown, how he sometimes felt guilty about leaving it behind. When it was her turn, she hesitated. Typically, she guarded her personal stories behind a veil of theatrical mystique. But as the hush of the night wrapped around them, she told him about her grandmother, who used to warm tea over a small fire inside their old caravan. She recounted how, as a child, she would watch the flickering flames over the kettle, enthralled by the mysteries of the world. Gabrielle listened intently, eyes lingering on hers as if memorizing all the facets of her face. That night, he stayed until the carnival lights dimmed and the footsteps outside her tent grew silent. Their evenings together soon began to crystallize into a pattern. He'd arrive after meandering through the carnival, greeting her with that unassuming grin that made her chest flutter. She would perform a quick closing for her last few customers, and then the rest of the evening belonged to them. Talking softly, sipping tea in porcelain cups she kept beneath the table. Sometimes she would do a small reading, and they'd laugh when the cards teased hidden emotions they both felt too shy to voice. Anya could see a change overtaking her, an eager anticipation that seized her each afternoon as she prepared for the night. Confidence crept into Gabriel's posture, too. His shoulders no longer stooped quite so low. He seemed happier, lighter. And she realized with a trembling delight that her crystal's vision was blossoming into the real man before her. Kind, softly spoken, with a heart she yearned to know more deeply. In time, Gabriel confided the complex tangle of guilt he felt about his mother's death, how he believed he had failed her because he'd been away at college when she fell ill. Anya gently reached across the table to grasp his hand. "You couldn't have known," she said, voice low and steady. "You weren't to blame." Tears glistened on his lashes, and instead of feeling helpless, she felt the purest ache of compassion. As the bond between them strengthened, her desire to see any further glimpse in the crystal ball diminished. She no longer needed the orb to tell her what she already felt forming inside her. She had always been the teller of fates, reserved and distant, but now she lived that same stirring wonder that her customers so often sought: hope, possibility, and connection. Late one evening, after the carnival's busiest hours, Anya felt a tense pressure build near her chest. Gabriel had joined her once more, and that same pressure flared with each shy smile he offered. She tidied the table, returning the tarot cards to their satin pouch and brushing a speck of dust from the polished wood. The hush in the tent enveloped them. "I'd like to ask you something," Gabriel finally said. The sincerity in his gaze made her heart pound. He swallowed, collecting his courage. "You told me once that fortune telling can give guidance, but that we choose our own path. And well, there's a new job I'm considering. It involves working with children, teaching them art. It's in a nearby town. Part of me wants to do it to see if I can encourage them to create something meaningful." He hesitated, voice steadying. "But I'm afraid. What if I'm not any good at it? Or if the kids see right through me? I can't seem to decide." Heart quickening with concern, she resisted the sudden impulse to reassure him that everything would be perfect. She quickly reminded herself that he wasn't just looking for sweet words, he actually wanted guidance. "Let's take a look," she said gently, gesturing for him to place his palms on the table. They had done many informal glimpses, but tonight an undeniable seriousness colored his request. She placed her hands lightly atop his, closed her eyes, and inhaled the ambient hush of the tent. A faint trace of incense lingered. She let her intuition flow toward him. At first, impressions swirled unpredictably, and then she saw faint shapes. A classroom of children, bright laughter, paint-stained smocks. She felt a sense of fulfillment. If her reading was correct, he had the capacity to be a comforting guide for them, encouraging small souls to find their creative spark. Then, between these gentle flashes, she glimpsed another image: a small house, a modest living room, and moonlight shining through a curtained window. She saw Gabriel and then her own silhouette close by, the two forms standing side by side in that cozy glow. A rush of warmth permeated her being, flooding her senses with a near overwhelming sense of love and belonging. She pulled away gently, opening her eyes to find him anxiously watching her, his cheeks flushed at the intimacy of her hands on his. "Well?" he asked softly. There was something so disarming about how he sought confirmation, as if her words alone might shape his destiny. She hesitated, mindful not to impose a prophecy. "I think this new path could lead you somewhere wonderful," she said, voice tremulous but hopeful. "You have a kind heart, Gabriel, and that's exactly what those children need." A slow exhale puffed from his lips. "Thank you," he murmured. "Sometimes that's all I need, to know someone believes I can do this." His gaze lingered on her face. In that stillness, Anya felt something begin to shift between them. It was no longer just about telling him his fortune or him confiding in her. A more profound connection tethered them, the way he hung on her words, the way she felt protective yet excited whenever she saw him. She took a breath and dared to voice her heart's soft yearning. "I believe in you," she whispered, her voice catching slightly. His eyes glistened with quiet gratitude. "I wish I could do something for you," he said, forging a gentle path away from his own vulnerability and onto caring for hers. This startled her. She had grown used to assisting others. To have someone ask how he might help her in return felt unfamiliar. "You have," she said simply, a ring of honesty in her tone. How could she explain the way he'd brought a boundless sense of promise into her life? That for lengthy years she had given hope to strangers but guarded herself against any personal illusions. She didn't dare try to distill such feelings into words, and so they sat, reading each other's unspoken truths through the hush of the tent. Soon after, the carnival prepared to head to the next town on its circuit. Large signs plastered around the fairgrounds read, "Closing soon, come enjoy the last weekend." As tents folded and colorful rides were dismantled, a hush of departure crept over the place. The carnival had been Anya's home for years. She traveled with it like a restless sailor, roving the seas, never lingering too long in any one harbor. But a growing ache in her chest made her realize she didn't want to leave Gabriel behind. The question loomed: would she ask him to go with her, or would she stay? The idea both thrilled and terrified her. 2 days before the carnival's final night, Gabriel visited the tent. His face looked troubled. "Your carnival's leaving soon, right?" he asked in a subdued tone. She nodded, setting aside her deck of cards. "We move on Monday." He inhaled deeply, as if trying to keep panic at bay. "I need to figure out my next steps," he admitted. "I've decided to take the art teaching job in the next town over. It starts in a few weeks." His eyes slid away from hers, voice faltering. "I don't want, I never thought I'd say this, but I don't want you to disappear from my life." His last words fell in a low hush. Anya's heart sprang at his confession. She slid closer, her gaze luminous. She had never given voice to those words for a man she'd known only a short time, but the truth of them pulsed through her veins. He took her hand in his, and for the first time they laced fingers, letting them stay locked. The hum of the carnival lights outside only made the closeness inside the tent more profound. No daisies or grand speeches were needed, just the quiet acceptance that what they felt was real and worth protecting. Finally, lightly, he asked, "Could I come with you, or is that too crazy?" She blinked. "You'd uproot yourself again. So soon?" He gave a gentle shrug. "I spent so long being afraid to move forward, but maybe I need to. If it meant having time with you, I'm prepared to take that chance." Heat pulsed through Inya's cheeks. She turned her thoughts inward. Could she ask him to leave behind the possibility of building a life in one place? She remembered the vision, the house, the moonlight, the sense of belonging. She thought about him guiding children, helping them paint their dreams. Slowly, the puzzle pieces resolved in her mind. "I think we both need stable ground, a chance to grow roots." She rose, gently leading him by the hand to the entrance of the tent. A crisp night breeze lifted strands of her hair. Gazing across the fairgrounds, she imagined all the roads she might take. Did she have to roam forever? Hadn't she started traveling primarily because she'd never found a reason to linger anywhere? Now she saw that reason. "What if I stayed?" she heard herself asking. A tremor filled her voice, the question surprising even her. "The carnival will move on, but maybe I don't have to." Gabriel faced her, brown eyes soft with wonder. "Would it be too hard, leaving what you've always done?" Her thoughts flashed to years of traveling with no real anchor, living in the swirl of ephemeral amusements and illusions. Then she looked at him, remembering the hush that settled over them whenever they truly opened themselves to each other. "The carnival is all I've known," she said softly, "but I don't want to keep drifting if that means losing you." They stood there in the carnival's twilight, heartbeats thrumming. He wiped a single tear from her cheek. Words weren't necessary for that moment. He leaned in, and she closed her eyes, feeling the gentle press of his lips against hers. It was a quiet, reverent kiss, a seal upon the unspoken promise that two lonely souls had finally found each other. Her arms went around his shoulders, pulling him closer. Excitement fizzed in her veins, mingling with tender relief. That night, she told the carnival manager that she would be parting ways with their traveling show. He cocked his eyebrow in feigned surprise. She'd been a fixture for years, but he nodded his acceptance with a small smile. "Sometimes, Madame Anya, fortune leads us where we need to be," he offered softly, patted her on the shoulder, and left her to prepare her farewell. After the final day of festivities, she packed her trunk of tarot cards, her embroidered tablecloth, her beloved crystal ball. Gabrielle helped her gather each item, carefully bundling them, as though fearful of disturbing anything sacred. In a swirl of lights and noise, the carnival's last evening roared to life. Crowds poured in, eager for one final taste of candied apples, swirling rides, and mystic wonders. She performed readings for those who came, continuing her trade and thrilling them with glimpses of possibility. Deep within, though, she felt the sparkle of a new future shining brighter than any carnival lamp. At midnight, rides shut down, lights flickered out, and only the swirl of smoke and the last echoes of laughter lingered in the air. The carnival crew commenced their teardown. Anya stepped outside her purple and blue striped tent for the final time, letting her reflective gaze sweep over the pop up world that had been home for so long. Gabriel stood by her side, silently offering the assurance of his presence. Her heart panged with nostalgia, but in that panging she also felt growing certainty. She tucked her arm through his, and together they walked away, leaving behind the empty carnival ground. A moonlit hush permeated the night as they headed through rows of silent rides. Breeze whispered across abandoned concession stands. It felt like stepping away from an old life, the hush of transition echoing in her ears. Yet the gentle warmth of Gabriel's body next to hers reminded her that this choice was not an ending, but the beginning of something precious and real. In the days that followed, Anya found a small apartment near the same town where Gabriel accepted his teaching position. She had enough earnings squirreled away from her years with the carnival to get them started. The apartment was modest, its rooms echoing with emptiness. They carried in boxes of her belongings and some of his keepsakes. One bright morning, sunbeams streamed onto them as they spread out a decorative scarf over a small table and placed her crystal ball at its center. Gabriel quirked an amused grin. I guess you can still do readings here, he teased, the new ambiance feeling different but special. She laughed softly, tidying a lock of silk hair behind her ear. I might set up a private practice, something small and personal. She tried to picture local customers trickling in, seeking her insights just as visitors had at the carnival. But now, perhaps, the readings would have something intangible and warm behind them, her own sense of contentment. Time slipped by in a blur of small victories. Gabrielle interviewed with the after-school program and was hired to teach art classes. Anya settled into a new routine of drinking morning coffee by the window, peering at the quiet street outside. Even though a murmur of fear occasionally nudged her sense of security, this uncharted territory, without the carnival's constant motion, she felt a sense of wholeness, an anchoring that allowed her to breathe deeply. One evening, as they stood in the kitchen, stirring spices into a simmering pot of soup, Gabriel grinned suddenly and lowered the wooden spoon. "Guess what the kids and I did today?" he asked. She raised an eyebrow, lips curving in anticipation. "Something creative, I hope?" He took her hand, pulling her into a playful dance right there on the linoleum floor. "We painted a giant mural. It's all about future dreams. We let the kids splash bright colors and shapes for everything they imagine might come their way." He beamed with pure excitement, which made her grin in kind. Spontaneously, she tiptoed up to brush her lips against his. "See, you're already changing those children's lives." He returned her kiss, then paused, eyes shining. "You've changed my life, Anya," he said quietly. They resumed stirring the soup, but each carried an unmistakable glow. She felt his earlier words sinking into her heart. Yes, life was shifting, and they were shaping something beautiful together. Perhaps that was always what fate had intended. Later that night, after finishing their meal, Anya pulled out the crystal ball. She lit a single candle on the dresser, making the shadows dance along the walls. Gabriel stood beside her, curiosity lighting his features. "Are you doing a reading?" he asked. She let her fingertips run along the crystal's cool surface, recalling the first time she glimpsed a shadowy figure. Had that truly been him? She sensed deep gratitude swirling within. "Not exactly," she murmured. "I just wanted to look at it, remember how this journey started." His arm slipped around her waist. "It started even before that," he said, leaning his forehead gently against hers. "It started the moment we both needed something, someone, and found each other." For a moment, her eyes flickered shut as she savored the tender hum of those words. "You know," she said, eyes slowly opening, "my grandmother told me once that if I ever glimpsed my own future in the crystal ball, I'd have a choice, to run toward it or to run away. I suppose I ran toward it, toward you." He searched her gaze, an affectionate glint in his eyes. "I'm glad you did." They leaned into a soft kiss. The candle's flame danced, casting a warm glow across the swirling orb. Through half-lowered lids, she glimpsed the reflection of their figures side by side. Her days of wandering felt distant, replaced by the quiet promise of every shared laugh, every gentle hug, every day she would spend building a life with Gabrielle. In that instant, the crystal ball emitted a faint shimmer, just as if it acknowledged this new future. Anya and Gabrielle observed it flicker fleetingly. She realized she didn't need to ask for another vision. She was living it. Their tender smiles met in the half light, and they continued embracing, as outside, the hush of night gave way to the gentle music of tomorrow.